All right, so this is really bright. I grew up in the suburbs, like most fundamentally unhappy people, and and in the suburbs that you don't have neighborhoods like you do in the city. You have developments, which is not a word that I would associate with a sense of home. More a word I would associate with bad news. Like a neighborhood is, a community, and a development is more like civil unrest. And so, like an uprising, or like waking up with a tumor, that's a development. And so like anyone who wants to be interesting, who grows up in a place that is so enforcedly boring, I developed an overactive sense of overactive imagination, basically. And so what happens when you grow up in the suburbs is that even the slightest diversion from the norm becomes incredibly important and incredibly magnificent. And so, for instance, I would go across the street with my dad to go get wood for our fireplace before my father would end up changing the fireplace to a gas fireplace and thereby destroying the entire moment. Thanks, Dad. We would go over into this little stretch of woods, and it would be like walking into a forest to get some wood. We'd be foraging, but really we would just be like walking into the woods that separated my development from a nursing home. But in my mind, it's like this really great adventure. And so I would have adventures with my cousin, who I grew up with. He was almost like a brother. It's an Italian thing. And so Matt would come over on Fridays, and he and I would play Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and he would be Raph because he had a bad attitude. And I had the worst attitude. I always wanted to be Raph, but I let him do it because I was the leader, Leo. And no one liked him, but I always had a lot of respect for him because he ate a lot of shit. And so I'd be sorting the bad guys, and he would be sighing the bad guys. And we ended up kind of wandering out of my development, and the development I lived in, by the way, is a wonderful example of irony. My development had one street in it that began where it ended. It was a big circle, and it was called Progress Place. I'm not kidding. And nobody got it. So anyway, we ended up venturing past Progress Place, and we go, we'd hop through people's yards, and we find what in our minds was a field, but really it was land that had yet to be developed, right? And it kind of dipped down in the middle, and running along the center of it is this little drainage ditch that ended up feeding into the mouth of this kind of big sewage access tunnel, right? Now, in the mind of a 10-year-old, that's not a sewage access tunnel, that's a cavern, right? And so Matt and I, realizing how big and scary and dark this is, we begin to venture forth into it, right? And we get a couple small footsteps in, and we begin to hear this noise. And this is the noise that has, for my entire life, plagued me. It is the noise of my fear. And we hear this noise coming from the darkness, this boom. And naturally, in the mind of a 10-year-old boy, it becomes the heart of some horrible monster waiting in the darkness to eat us. So we get a couple steps in, we hear and we just run out shrieking like tea kettles, right? And so for years, Matthew and I would venture out into this field, follow the little concrete gully, and get to the mouth of this cave. And we would try to venture deeper and deeper in, always turned away by our own fear and the sound of the creature that was waiting for us in the darkness. Over the years, this sound begins to follow me in the dark. You know how when you're going through your house and you're turning out the lights, you can start to hear the dark? It's just kind of maybe you're not as pathetic and scared of everything as I am. But I hear the dark. It's just kind of behind you, and you have to turn around and throw up ninja hands and fight the dark. I'm 31 and I do that. And so this whole story is about I'm afraid of the dark. I'm happy for these lights. So I begin to have nightmares, and this sound, this cadence, is the soundtrack to my nightmares, and that is the drum beat of every time I'm bounding through the dark to get to bed, and it's plaguing me, and Matthew as well. And for 2 years, it was 2 years, I was 12. Christmas Eve, 12 years old, my mother, in an act of the kind of stupidity that only a mother could have, got me a bow and arrow. And only a mother would think that a 12-year-old boy would not become a sociopath if you were to give him a bow and arrow. In her defense, the nub on the arrow, it was a nub, it wasn't even a point, it was a nub, and you couldn't kill anybody if you tried. You'd have to unstring the bow and strangle them with the bowstring. That's how you kill someone with this bow and arrow set. But when I got it, it was so adult, it was a weapon, right? And when I got this, and it's when you're a kid, you look at this thing that they're not treating you like a kid anymore, they're suggesting that you're an adult. And so it immediately becomes this kind of talisman, and it suggests that I can handle this creature that's waiting for me in the dark. And so Matt and his family comes over for Christmas Eve dinner, which again, if you're Italian, is a big deal. We ate 7 fish and yelled at each other. And I show him the bow and arrow, right? And he gives me this look, like, and I went, yeah. And we both knew, like, okay, we can kill it, right? So that was the look. It's a very specific look, but it was kind of. So we decide, let's go kill it. So our families are fighting. We end up kind of slinking out, right? And we're kind of crunching our way through the frosty grass. And it's pitch dark, right? Well, it's pitch dark, but like Christmas lights and shit like that. And we go and we find our way into this little gully. And we get into the cave. And Matt's got the flashlight. And I've got the bow. Actually, Matt's got the flashlight and the arrow. He wanted to carry the arrow because I got to carry the bow. But we go, and he gives me the arrow. And I knock the arrow, right? And like, I Legolas it. Like, before I even knew who Legolas was. But I got it like... Right? And we like ninja step our way into the dark. And Matt's got the flashlight, and I've got the bow, and we're ready, we're going to go and kill this thing. And what we don't realize, of course, is that flashlights do not obliterate darkness, they just make it move. You know what I mean? Like if it's dark in your house and you move a flashlight, all the shadows are like, across the dark, and it just makes you that much more scared. And we're stepping, we're going deeper and deeper, and we don't hear the heartbeat, we don't hear the sound, right? And so, of course, we think we've got it while it's sleeping. And so we're going deeper and deeper in. We get deeper than we've ever gotten into this cavern, right? And then we hear it. Error, you know, not the way it had been, not a cadence, but like random, kind of sporadic poundings of this thing's heart, like it's waking up. And I'm looking at him, he's looking at me, but like, we're gonna kill this fucking thing, right? And we go in there, we're getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And it stops, we don't hear it anymore, we don't know where we are. And I can hear my own pulse thundering in my ears. And then I hear it one final time, horrible cacophony from above me, just ba-bum, ba-bum, and it's right above me. And Matthew, the asshole, freaks out and drops the flashlight and runs screaming the other way. I let go of the arrow because I'm a genius, and the arrow goes skittering off into the dark. And now I'm now alone. Now I hear Matthew scream to the distance, and the flashlight's on the ground, and it's there, ba-bum, ba-bum, above me, and I know I'm going to die now. This is where I'm going to die. 12 years old, being in my pants on Christmas Eve. And so I reach down and like the last act of bravery, first and last ever act of bravery, I grab the flashlight and I have to see what it is. I've got to know what this creature looks like before it eats me and pits its teeth with my bones. And I aim it up and I'm ready to see what it is, and it's a goddamn manhole cover. And the ba-bum ba-bum was just the sound of cars driving over a manhole cover. And at the age of 12, I was like, my Christmas gift was basically the demystification of the world. Like, I realized that the world isn't full of monsters, it's just full of something mundane, especially if you live in the suburbs. The problem is that I'm now 31, I will be at the end of the month, and I'm still afraid of the dark. Like, I still end up running a little bit faster in my underwear, enjoy the image, as I go through the hallway to my bedroom, right? I can hear the dark still, and I have to like scamper on quick little feet to get to my room, and I can hear it behind me, and I have to turn and throw up my pathetic little kung fu hands, and just hi-ya at the dark. And the only thing that's there is just the dark. That's all I got. Thank you.